Blog Talk Radio.
Live from Washington, D.C., it's Quintessential Listening, Poetry Online Radio. QLPOR, as it's widely known, features a bevy of poets, spoken word artists, and live poetry readings with best-selling authors. Your host is Dr. Michael Anthony Ingram.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the program. My guest tonight, Quinn Flanagan, has been a friend of the program for a very long time. There has been more than 380 episodes to date, and he appeared for the very first time in 2018. He was the 18th guest. So he'll always have a home here with us. Now, who is this person? Who is this poet? Who is this author, Quinn Flanagan? He's a Canadian poet and author living in Elliot Lake, Ontario, Canada, with his wife and many bears that go through his garbage. A writer for the ages. Did you hear me? He's a writer for the ages. He's been published in numerous print and online journals. So tonight, during this visit, during his homecoming, he'll share poems from his new collection, Kiss the Heathens. Welcome to the program, Quinn Flanagan. Welcome, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Michael. It's an honor to be here, as always.
Like I said again, you were my 18th guest.
Yeah. Right from the start.
Right from the start, man. So you, like I said again, you'll always have a home here. Let's begin this poetic journey.
Okay.
Your new collection, Kiss the Heathens. What inspired you to write the book?
I was thinking I had the title first, which I don't normally do. But for this one I did, and it wasn't really a religious concept, but it was, or like a non-religious concept, but it was basically the heathens in terms of just down and out people in life or everyday living, and trying to capture that and do it in a way that was also compassionate and truthful to those experiences. So that was the idea behind the title, Kiss the Heathens, and then started writing the poems just basically around that basic concept.
Well, let's focus again a little bit more on that title, Kiss the Heathens. I mean, that really stands out. I mean, I'm like, wow. Just the idea. It conjures up so many different things. Why did you settle on that, though, that particular one, of all the titles in the universe?
I thought it was the best way. Like I said, it was like a compassionate way of looking at everyday life and living. And a lot of the book is people in different situations, different lives, whether it's their jobs or just interactions, relationships, whatever. And but kind of looking at it in a way that you just kind of throw the picture out and try to capture it as best you can and say, this is the way people are and this is the way life is. And there's one poem in the book called "This Is Open Country," and I think that kind of explains it best. It's a poem about some kids basically drinking and running across the highway, which is a game that they used to do where I grew up. But that basically it's like no God, no devil here, and it's kind of an open country and full of experience or a chance to do that. That was the idea.
All right. Tell me about the cover. It's quite striking.
Yeah, the cover is done by the publisher, Michelle McDonald. She designed the whole cover, and I absolutely love it. And as soon as I saw it, she sent it over, and she's like, "How's this?" And I opened it up, I'm like, "That's perfect. That's brilliant. That's exactly what I had in mind." And she's great, and it was the best experience working with her. And when I saw the cover, I was just like, "That's exactly kind of what I had in mind for how the book would look and what the book means as well." So it was perfect. It was just like, "Yep, that's it." So
now, I did not share the publisher. Tell us about the publisher.
The publisher is Roadside Press, and they publish all kinds of great writers, and they have a sister press too. It's all run by Michelle McDonald, very talented writer in her own right. But She publishes all kinds of great writers and at Gutter Snob Books and Roadside Press are the two. You know Catfish. He's one of them.
Yes. Oh, yes. I know Catfish.
Yeah. But there's like so many good writers. She publishes just basically amazing writers all the time. And so it was an honor to be a part of that, get to be a part of that. I wanted to.
Now, in general, in terms of predominant themes that you write about, what do you write about ordinarily in your work?
A lot of it with the narrative poems, it tends to be more, like I said, just people's lives or situations, and then often snippets of them that kind of give like some kind of deeper picture beyond that. But it's just usually quick snippets of everyday life, different situations, work, home, relationships, whatnot. And then there's kind of other poems that are a little less that, and they're kind of, I call them wandering poems.
Okay.
And they're kind of they jump around a bit more. They're a bit more fluid. They're kind of on the topics, but not really straight narrative or character based. So they kind of break up. It's those two things that I kind of use to build the book around, I guess.
Yes. Well, everyone, without further ado, I give you my friend, Ryan Quinn Flanagan. You're on.
All right. Thanks, Michael. This first poem is the first poem of the book. It's called Tippi Hedren Called. And Michelle was great. She actually put a picture of Tippi Hedren having her cigarette lit by a crow on the set of The Birds on the inside with the opening poem. So that was great. But here's the poem. Tippi Hedren Called. Tippi Hedren called, I said. She wants her birds back. The woman I was with tried to shush me with a finger to my mouth. The pet shop kept the lizards beside the birds, in these tiny little cages like loneliness under a hot light. Some toothy sales kid on commission walked up and asked if he could be of any assistance. Is that any way to treat the lizard people? I shouted. Sorry, sir, I don't understand. Your superiors, the lizard people, locked away like common muggers. They seem happy, he said. Please ignore him, I heard a voice from behind me. Do you have any sharks, I asked, besides the ones that work on commission, am I right? I work on commission, the toothy kid admitted. Not enough, Junior, I smiled. She was ignoring us both now, had moved on to the puppies and kittens in the back, that passive-aggressive sign that always asks you not to knock on the glass. If she returned to the pet shop or the mall, she never did it with me. She got a dog, I know that much. Some pure breed that would make Lenny Riefenstahl blush. Superior slobber and all that shit. No idea what happened to Captain Commission. Probably started his own line of pet recliners and made a bundle. Getting in on the ground floor, just like the elevator in my building always does. And this next one I'll read is kind of an idea of where I was talking earlier about the character poems and the snippets. And this one's called Staying in the Room Where her ex-husband used to beat her for $49 a night. She seems to know I don't have it in me. Staying in the room where her ex-husband used to beat her for $49 a night. The nice couple that own the place imploring us to pet their dying cone-headed dog as they hand us the key. Reassured that such matters are just a precaution. That he kept itching where he should not itch, which sits just fine with a man who has been itching the short and scragglies for almost a half century of higher gas and lower expectations. And she moves right in as though she never left, which makes me feel bad because this is a family place and family should give you better, although it never really does. And this one's called A Bar Mitzvah Made to Look Like a Suicide. Rabbi Rosen can be a stickler when it comes to reciting the Torah, and stammering Lenny Horowitz is really slogging through the theological jungle. It is painful to watch, friends and family gathered, a bar mitzvah made to look like a suicide. And you get the feeling little Lenny doesn't want to enter manhood at all. And who could blame him? Wise boy. And I could feel his face on fire each new acne breakout establishing its own city limits. That terrified, cracking voice you can barely hear, even at the front of the church. Poor little Lenny, he was such a nice boy. Helped his mother with the groceries on the long walk back from Siemens. This one's called Fuck You and the Yogi You Rode into Town On. Okay. If I had faith, don't you think I'd show it off like some shiny new fuck me Corvette or some in-ground pool just back from water wing hell? Would you rather kneel in a temple or sit in a recliner? That's what I thought. Fuck you and the yogi you rode into town on, stinking up my place with all that bloody incense. More like nonsense if you ask me, which of course no one ever does. And I offer to drop my shorts to show you my third eye. Give you the name of a decent alignment guy down at the mechanics if you are that worried about your chakras. No, I am not a vegetarian. I am a meaty, throbbing carnivore just like all the rest. Thanks for the prayer mat. I've been looking for something the cat can scratch the hell out of. That is not me. The cat that is a carnivore, while we are on the topic of adorable little forms of mass murder. Of course I believe in God. I have a cat, don't I? And this one's called Everyone Gets Gas. My only gas station gig. The boss was a total asshole. Made me change tires as people filled up and drove off, blaming me for not being attentive to the customer. I told them I thought they got exactly what they came for, not wanting my attentiveness, just the gas. He threatened to take it out of my check, but I was making so little it wouldn't even cover the first two culprits. He fired me, and I thanked him. I remember that. I was so tired of the graveyard, of getting kicked around like some crushed soda can you find in the street. My next gig was telemarketing, cold calling, trying to sell freezer orders of beef for $5.85 an hour from the second floor of this nondescript building along Dunlop Street. You'd never know it was there, which is just the way I felt about myself at the time, living in my aunt and uncle's basement with the many jars of preserves.
Oh, wow, Ryan. You know, I can tell that I'm going to need to myself because I'll be laughing inappropriately. But hey, in 2007, you contributed an article to Setu magazine, My World and Words, an Uneasy Balancing Act. And you made this statement as I was reading through it today. You said, writing for me has always been an uneasy balancing act between escape and hard reality. Yeah. I prefer writing poems that contain strange ideas or turns of phrases while trying to still express something deeply relatable and real. Let's talk about that. So I guess my question is, if it's an uneasy balancing act, how are you able to select the poems for this collection? Did it lean toward escape or did it lean toward hard reality?
At the start when I was writing, this one definitely lent more towards harder reality and character narrative poems. And then as I went on, as usually happens, you get some of the wandering poems a bit and, a bit more jumping around, and which I enjoy doing. And it really is a balancing act between those two all the time. And I guess to varying degrees, it's which one dominates more than the other. And I guess in this case, it's the former. But they're both are present at all times. So like I said, when I'm writing it, it really is a balancing act. And sometimes poems have both. It's somehow characters or things, situations end up in there that you're trying to explain. But at the same time, it's in a very light way that's different than the other ones.
Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me of the yin and yang of life. You know? Yeah. Wow. When you think about this particular book in terms of organizing it, Is it grouped in terms of theme? How's the style? How did you go about that? How did you form the sections, if there are sections?
I never do sections, and I have the themes basically in my head, like 3 or 4 themes that I notice when I'm writing, and I kind of just keep that basically in my head, like on a most basic level, that noting that it's in those poems, and then you write the poems, you go along, and then when you go to assemble them, you keep that in mind, and so you try to keep I try to keep some of the styles that are more alike, keep those poems separate from each other, and then the themes you try to spread them out so it kind of is a recurring theme in the book, certain things, and that's kind of how I order it. And then outside of that, the only rule I have, if you can call it a rule, is I kind of treat it more like building an album. Like a record, like with those old, you get your old vinyl and you look at the albums and the way they built it, and that's kind of how I approach building books, is like building albums.
Wow.
And so when I'm spreading the themes out, I'm kind of keeping that in mind, or like a musicality with the words as well. So I treat it kind of like building an album, or I guess a concept album. But
all right, what's your favorite concept album then?
Obviously The Wall is great.
Okay. Pink Floyd, all right.
yeah, and that would be one that's really structured like that, although they have kind of sections. I also like 9 Inch Nails, the Fragile.
All right.
Really love that one, and there's so many. Like I like Radiohead's OK Computer, the way it's structured, that album.
All right. You're giving me some tips for what I should listen to later on. So thank you. Back to my saying that I need to mute myself. You also stated in the 2017 article that there's almost always a dash of humor, and that for you, humor has always been important to you as both a tool of sarcasm and as something reserved in the face of a world that often does not seem too funny to experience each day. And what I want to know from you, Ryan, is, does it hurt you to write poetry? If not, why not?
Yeah, it doesn't. I think it used to when I was younger, the way I approached it, and now it doesn't. But there was even humor back then. Like I'm a joker at heart, so they'll always, it'll be in some of the titles will make you laugh, or I'll do little things that were, they're upset all the time, or little jokes or humor thrown in, which of course the world we can certainly see now is not really funny, but
yes.
It doesn't mean that you have to get caught in the straight drudgery of it. I always think humor is very important, especially as a uniting factor for people too, in one, experiencing the world, but two, when you're reading a book or reading any work or looking at any work of art. I think humor is a great connector of people, because people can see it, and it's very relatable, and it breaks down barriers. I think humor is the best way to do that, and humor is central to me.
Well, for me, I've shared many times that if I didn't laugh, I'd cry all the time. So I believe in humor as well. Yeah.
I have a saying that I always think about, and I wrote it somewhere. I forget what it is, but it was basically when you're looking at things that you either laugh at the joke or you are the joke, and I choose to laugh. So
yes. Yeah, well, we can talk after the show about growing up in humor. Well, please share some more of your work.
Sure. This one's kind of like the humor we were just talking about. This is a title of this poem, My Linoleum Will Floor You. A pun can be intended just as blunt force trauma can, and you should know right off that my linoleum will floor you, astound you really, like some browbeater Prometheus sticking his head inside the mouth of a cowering circus tiger in cages, large enough to house half a dozen men on their way to lethal injection without a note from a doctor, which is how ditches become culverts, and the Pollyannas pretty up everything, including these spanking new floors you can't help but walk over. with that dominatrix friend with a cricket paddle and a fine British accent full of safe words and a few of the other kind. And this next one's called The Devil's Coffee in a Cold Styrofoam Cup. Pulling up that brown 70s cigarette burn comforter at $79 a night, I sit and listen to the main strip traffic splash through the flooded drainage system for a few hours. Play with a rounded switch on the bedside lamp that went out when Hirohito poisonous blowfish bit it under a careless knee-jerk sky that had moved on to other things. That hyena-packed deck of cards missing the one-eyed jack in the Gideon's preachy side table. Another cold water 5 a.m. shower, and I am back on the road. The devil's coffee in a cold styrofoam cup in my lap. And a dawn's motionless deer still littering the long, gutted highway with eyes wide as watermelons. And this next one is, I guess, not so funny, but it's more of a, I guess you could call it a confessional one, but it's about my family directly. It's called Spilling the Beans. My parents tried to kill me, threw me down a flight of stairs when I was 8 months old. I had to be airlifted with a brain hemorrhage, was given a less than 10% chance of living by the doctors. And when I survived, my mother waited until I was old enough to understand language to tell me, quote, I hate you and wish you were never born, on many occasions. Then she started in on my little sister, pulling on her hair as she combed it out each morning, yelling at her to stop crying like a little baby and calling her a little bitch. And when I tried to protect my little sister, my father stepped in and always protected my mother, until he cheated on her with the waitress he met at one of his favorite restaurants, finally building up his asshole courage to leave my mother and move in with the waitress of his dreams. And now one more humor than the last one. This is called The Eagle Has Landed. The buildings were closed at night so the janitorial team could come in and clean. Blocks of buildings done in rotation by the same three-man team. Dunstler was the lead. Sussman had been there a couple years, and Waltham was the new guy. Each in charge of separate floors as they went from one building to the next. Dunstler had recently introduced a new walkie-talkie system to make sure everyone was awake and doing their job. You there, Sussman? No answer. Sussman, quit playing with yourself. You there? Asked Dunstler again. Then a voice came back over the walkie-talkie. The eagle has landed. Then another voice. The hawk has dropped another egg. Quit fucking around, you idiot, said Dunstler. Don't you realize we have 4 buildings to do tonight? The wiener has been tugged, came Sussman's voice. The eagle has been dusted, Waltham's scratchy voice chimed in. Dunstler wanted to laugh, but there wasn't time. 4 buildings was a heavy night, each building with many rooms and floors. The Walton has dropped a deuce, came Sussman's voice again. Just laughter from Walton. Dunstler began to think this new walkie-talkie system may not have been a good idea, that they would all be out of the job. The Dunstler has been oiled, came Sussman's voice. Dunstler said nothing, emptying all the garbages in the room before turning out the light and moving on. And this one is called The Sleeping Bags on the Subway Grate Are Not a Sleepover. Another extreme cold advisory from those never left out in it. Frostbite in moments, according to the public health officials, who look good on television after hair and makeup, and I can see my breath as I walk down by Dundas Square, bundled up like some fine knitted yeti under all those bright advertisements flashing from every corner. The sleeping bags on the subway grate are not a sleepover, shifting every so often so you know that someone is still alive under there. No one really ever taking a notice anymore of something that is always there, that birthmark on your thigh or that used bookstore full of musty dog ears. I never see their faces, but the shame is to be shared even if the cold is not.
Wow. I mean, how do you follow a set like that with questions?
Thanks.
You know. Now, of course, it's none of my business whether any of those stories are real or not, and you don't need to share. But that's
they're real.
Oh, Ryan.
Yeah.
Wow. So for you, is a poem letting your guard down or building a wall?
I think when I was younger, there was a lot more of the wall building,
okay.
and then you kind of discover that the more honest you are in your writing, that will connect or resonate with people more, because they're looking for that. A lot of them are doing it in their own writing as well, and like I said, you can still do it with humor. I mean, not all of them obviously have humor, but a more honest way of looking at yourself and looking at the world and other people. And I think that's the most relatable way. And if you do it kind of in a relatable language as well, then people can really understand, and you connect with them better, I think.
All right. In terms of relating, in terms of language, do you see yourself as more of a storyteller or wordsmith, or a combination?
I guess it's both, a combination, but I always thought more of a wordsmith, because I like the idea. Like I said, I like to do the wandering poems and, kind of have sometimes some obtuse language, or go wandering a bit and be playful with it. But when I do go back and look at a lot of the stuff, I kind of have to concede that I might be more the storyteller. Mm-hmm. I just I'm not meaning to. I was actually setting out kind of do the other thing, but I think naturally it kind of goes towards the storyteller. Yes. Even though I like the idea of the wordsmith and I like to experiment and go that way, but I think it's probably the former.
All right. So when you write, are there poetic devices that you use most often, or it's just whatever is on your mind at that time? How do you go about that?
I noticed I use a lot of metaphors, often with the turns of phrases too. I notice that in a lot of the poems there's a lot of alliteration. The titles will often be plays on things. They'll be comical or humorous, but they'll usually be small plays on idioms that are common, and then I just kind of switch them up or play with the words a bit. But they're basically plays on that. So those are kind of the literary devices I see the most.
All right. Speaking of titles too, please share with me the titles of 5 poems in the book. Any 5 poems, randomly.
Yep. Okay. The failed magician has arm hair up his sleeve.
Let me stop. Okay, go
ahead. The Birdman of Alcatraz is sacrosanct in avian circles, never concerned with popular flight. The key to the bathroom is just the key to the city by other means. That one's funny. Holly, don't go lightly into that good night with a red wheelbarrow full of Tintern Abbey.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess
that'll do it. That'll do it.
Oh, that's fine. Okay.
That'll do it. That's my question is to you, when titling a poem, and I mean your titles are 1, they're out there, 2, they're original, 3, they're, I don't know, I can't describe it. When you're titling a poem, my friend, what should you consider when you're putting one together, the title of a poem?
I kind of look at the theme really loosely, like the title can it'll be related to it directly, but really in a loose way, and then that allows you to be more playful with the words. And I prefer it too when it's not you're not just playful in the poem. Like I like the titles to be really kind of playful and really grab your attention. Definitely come with different words, putting different images together. Like some of them that I was just reading there. I prefer titles like that. Not always, but it is fun to do. I do enjoy that.
Okay, so the poem about being thrown down the stairs. I can't remember the title of the piece. Share that title again.
Oh, that's Spilling the Beans.
You would never know.
Yeah.
What was the song? Oh, my
that
God.
was just kind of a straight confessional, so I figured Spilling the Beans was the best way to put it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we'd like to know what comes first, the title or the poem?
It depends when I'm writing it. Sometimes I'll have the ideas for the titles. A lot of the times I'll just let it flow, and whatever comes out, and then I'll often find the title comes out in the poem, and then I'll use one of the lines or a thing that I like from the poem, and I'll go, oh, that's the title there, and it comes to me. I don't really think too much about much of them. So
all right. Here's a follow-up question to that one. When you write, my friend, who leads, you or the poem?
Definitely the poem. In my case, it's I'll have like.
Tell me more.
I have like writer's notes, but they're very few, and it's just like a basic skeleton idea or a word or two. Sometimes the title will come first, and you'll write that down, but often you'll go up. Some days I'll go up with no notes, and I'll just crack open a bottle of wine and just write away, and have some fun at it, and then whatever comes out. So I definitely let it have free reign. I let it off the lead and just let it go where it goes. And
all right.
And then editing is where you kind of try to. I don't change too much in the writing, but you kind of go back later, and then you can kind of see. Sometimes you'll shake your head at yourself, But that's my process.
All right. We're going to take a brief break, but here's a question that I'd like to ask you now that you can answer after the break. All right?
Sure.
How much mental energy should it take to solve a poem or to understand it? Make sense?
Yeah.
How much mental energy? All right. We'll be right back. We are back. I am Michael Anthony Ingram. I'm here with Ryan Quinn Flanagan. Ryan, I asked a question. I asked you a question because people often talk about accessibility in terms of poetry. So again, how much mental energy should it take to solve or understand a poem, in your opinion?
I don't think it should take too much. I mean, I try to write accessible often, not always, but I think for the reader, I prefer it to be more relatable and in accessible language and that. But there are things like when I'm reading, say, like Philip Larkin or something like that, it can seem simple at times, but then you kind of got to stop and look at because the language is really, it switches and it's really rich. And it has these, things, and there are things you sit and think about more. So in that case, there's certain writers where you do that. Frank O'Hara a bit too, but I think most of the time I prefer it more accessible. I find it takes me a lot of mental energy to write. Like I'm tired after a day of writing, but reading, I think it should be pretty accessible for the reader.
So for you then, what is the most difficult part of the artistic process? And then conversely, what's the easiest part of it?
The most difficult part for me is the editing. I hate editing. the editing process is horrible. But and the fun part for me is writing. I enjoy it. Like it tires me though. Like it'll take a day or two to recover after you do it, because I'll sit and write for about 6 or 7 hours.
And
And
it's a long time.
and then I'll kind of be really lethargic and tired, certainly for the next day.
Right.
But and so then you know take a few days, and then you can come back and do something again. But yeah, that's how it works for me.
So in terms of the editing, what exactly is it that's the sticking point for you?
Oh, just the process of itself. Like I said, I make very few changes to the poems once they're written. I just assume they're written in a time and place, and I fix spelling and grammar issues. But besides that, I don't really change much of anything else. I just treat it like it was written that day and that time, and if I'm happy with it, then I just go with that, and that's what I almost always do.
Okay. Well, let's continue this poetic journey. Please share some more of your work.
Sure. This one's called The Junkie in the Bathroom. James Bond was invented in the faraway Caribbean so that there are no heroes in real time, and I stumble over the junkie in the bathroom, drooling across a sickly institutional green tiled floor that has not been cleaned since mental health went looking for answers up the nose. Half a dropper's blood still sticking out of some bruised patchwork arm that probably knew it had a hot shot coming. The sound of the hairdryer still going, so that I know I am not the first to such discoveries, but perhaps the first to care. This next one is the title poem of the book, Kiss the Heathens. The tower is alive, still unbeaten, grass-fed along some country road where spent goldenrod forgets to live. Arguments in cars that sit in stone driveways, steaming up the windows. That clumsy truck stop way, sloppy Joe beliefs stay behind to kiss the heathens. Stand over flooded urinals of endangered elephant ivory. One for the road to El Dorado, instances of smoker's cough, an adulterer's blanket through crinkled toes, that pavement burn that never quite heals like you want it to, that thing they call a burn, another French kiss mouth with more tongue than sense, so many stairs to climb in the dark that our painted caffeine pharaoh just back from coffee bar Egypt never tries. And this one is called Woman with a Blue Drink. She sits 3 tables over, petulant as pigeon swoon. A sun hat so large and intrusive that it bangs against the backs of other patrons. And my lazing hammock eyes sit people watching, an open patio to bring in foot traffic from the big wide world. But the woman with the blue drink can't stop running into scissors in a social sense. And I get the feeling 1 or 2 other patrons may be planning her murder in the budding chestnut of their heads. Well, the waiter with the clip-on tie comes running out with a tray loaded down with dishes for the table full of hip huggers just in town, their boxy sequin luggage tucked under the table amongst an army of freshly painted toes. And this one is called Leaving for Croatia. He writes to tell me he is leaving for Croatia in a week, and I ask him what the hell he thinks is in Croatia that is not here. And he answers Croatians, as though he is being smart. So I tell him to have a good time in Latvia, where goldfish dance the jitterbug and all the buildings are repeat felons. And this one is titled Working the Graveyard and Never Once Thinking of Death. If you're looking for a way out, a path seasoned trackers will give up on in spite of high motivation and toilet training in the extreme. I've worked long enough that I never want to bend to the faltering hours again. Not in the factories, not along the line, muling my back out for decades like some something meant to fail, working in the graveyard and never once thinking of death, that time card in your hand like there's a nearby punch clock to swipe in case of troubles, with your laminated name on it like all the others that came before. And this one's called Silent Partner. This one was usually not mean-spirited, even called him a friend before I learned that those do not really exist. Just competing interests and those momentarily aligned. But we were at this popular downtown beer hall along Spadina Avenue, and he introduced me to his new love interest. She went right into sign language, his silent partner, he joked. A deaf mute making those strange guttural noises whenever she tried to accentuate something. A really nice girl, much too good for this one or any of us at that young time. She didn't even come with a friend, just left there to hang. I was the best of the worst, but what is that really? People are the worst to each other because it is easy, especially after a couple drinks. Thank you.
Wow.
That one was a true story as well. But.
Right. I'm going to need a drink after we finish. Oh. You know, when I think about that word heathen again, or heathens.
Yeah.
I had a great question. I'll have to, it'll come back to me. It's one of those questions that pops in your head. Oh, yes, here it is. When I think of the word heathen, I think of a person who's an outlier, someone who is shunned potentially by society for whatever reason. And they may go through life feeling voiceless. So how does poetry help anyone feel as if they've got a voice? Again, I'm just throwing that one in there.
Yeah.
For $5. All right. What do you think? I want to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it's tough. I know for me, I mean, I need to write. I know that. So for me, expression is absolutely important as an individual, and having the ability and the time to do that. But for life, I agree with Heathen. That's actually a perfect word. What I was looking for was when I was approaching the book, where I was trying to say not in a religious sense, but more like outliers of society, or people that are kind of on the outs, or dealing with jobs that they have not so well, or relationships they have not so well, and how life can be tough in that way. Then I think it's tough for poetry to help too much, I guess. Like I said, if you can read something that's relatable and humorous and kind of brings a smile to your face about things that may not always be like that, then I think that's helpful. And and that's something I always try to do, or try to keep in mind when I'm writing.
Life, as this is just kind of just stream of consciousness. There's a healthy tension in life. It's pretty much what you're writing about. The harsh reality versus the times where we want to feel frivolous and just have fun for fun's sake.
Yep.
There's just this, and so what I'd like to know, and it's not on this topic, of course, but as you think of who you are now, how has your work evolved as you've grown as a writer, as a poet? As you think about that healthy tension, how has it changed, Fred?
I think it had a lot more of straight tension early on. Just
okay. All right. Mine too. All right.
In youth, that kind of tends to happen, but I think as you got a little older, I find that the writing is, and the humor helps with it, but I think there's much more of a tinge of compassion. I understand what people have gone through now, what I've gone through as well, so I can relate more, and it kind of, I think it thickens up the writing. It helps make it better. It's not so harsh or mean. It's a lot more compassionate. There could still be mean commentaries or things, but I find that I have a lot more compassion now in the writing, and I enjoy that. I think it helps, and it helps with perspective too, because you understand.
Hmm. Well, then how would you classify your ability to write poetry as a creative gift or creative art?
I always look at it kind of an art, and that I really enjoy fine art and movies, music. I think music's one of the highest forms of art, but I always look at it as you're creating art, and I always look at people too when they're other people as well when they're writing, when they say something, is it one, it connects, but is it interesting? Is there turns or things that make you think, little turns of phrase or concepts or ideas that you kind of thought it would go one way, but it definitely didn't. And it was something, there's something different there. And that's kind of where I think the art lies. And so I definitely look at it as creating art.
As you've grown and changed and seen the world, who are some of the writers, thinkers, readers, human beings who inspire you now or inspire your writing?
Well, there's plenty of writers that are and great artists out there today that some of them I work with.
Okay.
But if you're talking like historically, like influences.
No, actually today, based on what
today.
you've seen of the world, like right now in your life, in your world right now. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be the writers that Catfish and we know many of the same writers, and I have many artists that I work with for different covers and stuff, and they're just fantastic artists. I can't believe what they can do, and that's the type of stuff that inspires me all the time is the creative things that I can see people doing. That's the great thing for Facebook for me was I've connected to all these artists, different types of artists, working in different styles, and it's amazing to see what people can do. I enjoy it so much, and connecting with them and working with them.
Yes, and I believe, and I'm sure you do too, that with Zoom has truly changed the poetic world. Because you could be in your home, and I'm in North Carolina right now, but tomorrow I could be in India. It's just changed the way that we think, the way we operate. So with that in mind, what about social media? How has it contributed to poetry?
I think,
or not contributed.
I think with poetry itself, like the actual writing, I don't know. Like I guess if you were looking a lot into the tendencies of the writing, then it would. But I don't think it contributes too much to mine at all.
Okay.
But in terms of connecting with the artists and publishers and editors and certainly the artists, you get to see what they're doing and all over the world and the fresh takes and the different takes. And it just really opens your world up to a way that it wouldn't have been before. Like before this, when it was just, the self-addressed envelopes you're sending out and, it's your small world and you're just writing in your little room.
Yes.
And there was no connectedness really at all. So it was really just you and the books. But now there's so many people out there and they can influence you and they can show you artists or things that you haven't seen. And that's happened to me all the time. And that's where it's opened things up. And like you said, you could be in India tomorrow. You can be talking to somebody in Russia. There'll be people from all over the world.
Yes,
so
it's true.
and that's fantastic.
So when you think about a particular book, are you hoping that the book resonates with a broad range of readers, or are you attempting to target a specific audience?
I never try to target a specific audience. I always hope it's as broad a readership as possible, that they enjoy the writing. That's why I try to make it accessible or connect through humor or different ways, because I hope that, pretty much anybody could read it and find something in it and enjoy it. And so that's always my approach is I want it to be as broad as possible.
Very nice. So if someone asked you, a potential reader, to give them some advice prior to reading the book, what would you share with them?
That's a tough question.
Well, Ryan, that's why they pay me the big bucks, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's why this question is coming from your yacht.
Out in the Black Sea, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Off of Turkey. All right. What would you tell me, man, if I wanted to pick your book up and I'm like, Ryan, should I buy this book from you, brother? What advice would you give me in terms of what I need to be prepared for?
I would say just be prepared for things that may seem obvious, but then they won't be. That things will be turned on their head. I like to do that a lot and kind of mess around with things and turn phrases. So I would say kind of just kind of expect the unexpected and have look forward to some happy surprises, hopefully.
All right, then. Hey, continue sharing your work, my friend.
Okay, thank you. This is probably the only COVID poem I ever wrote, just from the 2 years of hell that we all went through, or so, and continuing. But it's called Do You Dream of People in Masks Now? We were almost 2 years into some blurry day drinking pandemic that had failed everyone when she asked me that question. Do you dream of people in masks now? She asked. I had never thought of it, but I told her I dreamt of them the old way. I could see the surprise on her face. I could tell that she did not anymore. It was probably another 6 months before I had my first mask dream. Then I started to see them everywhere, jumping out of the popcorn ceiling overhead. When I told her I finally saw them, she seemed to feel a little better. Not that I was seeing what she was seeing, but that she was not alone. All that wine, the way you start to clank when you walk. So that was our pandemic. I'm going to read This Is Open Country because I had mentioned that one earlier as kind of a central idea with the game that we played as a kid running across the highway, but how it was central to this book. So this is called This Is Open Country. First there was the bottle, then the boys broke down. Stripped down to babe is born, streaking across 6 lanes of highway traffic, before howling through the patchy half-sickle woods in some lime-soaked pauper's victory and beating early hair chest with bloody invincibility fists that knew your life was never really yours to begin with. You look scared, jeered Wilkerson, slamming Bradley on the back after 3 false starts. Bradley screaming back across all those dark lanes and taking the bottle from Farmer, who drew a pentagram in the blood on his forehead before shooting back across the highway towards Wilkerson. There was always a bottle on the other side, and Bradley took a giant swig when he got there. You think some stupid devil is going to help you? Asked Wilkerson. This is open country. Then Wilkerson walked up to the shoulder of the road and started beating off to the passing cars that started to honk. Bradley was waiting on the other side, 400 meters from the nearest off-ramp, slamming back a bottle that would never drink itself. And this one is called Midnight Gas Station Sandwich. Essa Road was always close as poorly paved excuses, that long drunken pilgrimage over the Highway 400 bridge, past the White Towers Motel with bloodlust bed bugs for walls, half the doors kicked in from previous raids, and the way our camel-dry throats hump parched through that ringing slime bell door, that midnight gas station sandwich which always tasted like the best thing in existence. Ravenous tearing hands through the package, something slurred for the pimply cash-out boy trying to keep tally in a dying time. Then back over the bridge, the graffiti of whooshing lights, of passing trolls, rinsing taste bud tongues, and never the microwave people. 3 kinds of mystery meat, at least one of them pretending to be roast beef. And this one's called Buried with the Treasure. This will not become another somber poem about the dead buried with the treasure. Those winning Spanish bullion legs your grandmother had during the war drove the enemy to bedroom armistice, if you are to believe the family lore. Old pictures shared as evidence. We will assume the priest had said his piece, that the many smelly freedom fighters will never declare theirs, and that this poem is about something else entirely. Rolled up bus pass, dragon fruit in season, that scratchy razor wire voice. And the last one I'll read here is called Scratch Pad. I got out my pencil and scratch pad and asked her to sit for me. A large smile shot across her face. She seemed very excited. I told her to try remain as still and quiet as possible. Then I took a long look and began drawing. She shifted a few times but remained fairly still. An hour later, I put down the pencil, announced that I was finished. I showed her the sketch on my sketch pad. At first she seemed confused, then angry. I could not understand why. I'd drawn a very beautiful city.
Wow. You write incredibly well, my friend.
Thanks.
You really do. I mean, I'm too old to lie at this point. That's my new favorite thing to say, and it's true. So how would you describe your poetry in general or this specific book? What does it communicate about the human condition?
I think it probably communicates that it's what we're given is a tough hand in most cases, and we should depend on people a little more because we have to, and depend on each other and help each other. But basically we have a tough hand, but if we can find humor in it, we can find a way through it, and kind of find something that is worth living for. But it's not easy. It's never easy. So that's kind of what I would say it is.
Well, that's a profound statement. So how did it take you to write this particular book?
The writing part, it was probably over a 4-month period, I think.
Okay. So what do you think you learned about yourself at the end? Once you turned it in to the publisher and let's say you saw it on the shelf or on Amazon or wherever, what do you think you learned about yourself during that entire process?
Like I said earlier, I think I learned that with age, the perspective is actually open more because there's more compassion in the experience, or you're coming at it from a place that's less harsh. So I think that allows it kind of opens up the perspective and the relatability to characters or people around you, people you see in daily life when you come up with some of these ideas or see things that happen, because sometimes poems just write themselves when people are out and about. But you can see them with a different light now, and I can kind of relate to people, I think, more than I used to be able to.
Do you think you live your life like it's a poem?
I used to.
Oh, really? Oh, that's another 45 minutes. All right, go ahead. Talk to me, buddy. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it was. I would obviously when I was younger, you do crazy stuff. Like I said, running across the highway and swigging things, or we had this. I'd take the car out with friends, and we'd see who the first one to put the seatbelt on was as I drove my parents' car over a blind railroad track at 120 kilometers an hour through a blind intersection to see who'd get scared,
Oh, wow.
Just all kinds of things like that, and just the stupid things you do, the invincibility of youth and things like that. And then so, you kind of live like a poem in that respect. But
how is that like a poem? How is that like a poem? Just the freedom of it, the wild abandon. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's the freedom of it. It's because that's kind of what you look for in the poem. When you're writing for it, it's kind of like just a freedom of experience, right, in what you're doing, in the act of what you're doing, and kind of in the subject matter. But when I was younger that, you're kind of living the subject matter. You're living from couch to couch and doing some of the things I was talking about. And that's more so, obviously not doing that now. Now I'm older, and you look out and you're worried about the bears going down the street. So you don't go outside and walk down the street with the bears. So.
With the bears, right?
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of expressing yourself, so if poetry was banned tomorrow, what would you do instead to express yourself?
Well, I can't do music and I can't paint, and I can't do many of the other arts. So I would imagine that I would probably have to write in secret. I do like it's that story of Solzhenitsyn, I think, Russian writer, and the KGB was coming by all the time and under Stalin, and he was worried that they were going to take him away to the gulag, so he had to hide his writing. So he'd write and then bury it in the backyard and hide it. So I think that would probably be me, or because I have to write, so I know I'd still be doing it, but I'd probably be like him.
Right. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Would you share just one more before we go? One more poem to bring us home from this poetic journey.
I'll finish with The Dead Wear Suits.
Okay. Boy, you know how to brighten up a room, man. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, let me be
always good to finish on a funny note.
Yes, sir.
The Dead Wear Suits. Everyone gets to sleep in eventually. And I look down in the casket, realize the dead wear suits, far better dressed than they ever were in life. And the funeral goers put on their suits, and all those suits down in the central business district chasing a buck, going through one of the longest dress rehearsals I have ever seen. Thank you.
Right. Please read that one again, please. I was just settling in, and then you were done. So,
yeah, it was a quick one.
It was a quick one. Please, just one more time. Thank you.
Sure. The Dead Wear Suits. Everyone gets to sleep in eventually, and I look down into the casket, realize the dead wear suits, far better dressed than they ever were in life. And the funeral goers put on their suits, and all those suits down in the central business district, chasing a buck, going through one of the longest dress rehearsals I have ever seen.
Where can Kiss the Heathens be purchased?
The usual places, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and that, but the best way is really if you go to Roadside Press, just and get it straight from the publisher. That's usually always best. And I know Michelle's great with that too. So I'd suggest go to Roadside Press, and they have fantastic authors there, all kinds of books to look at and choose from. So,
all right. So where do you go from here, my friend? What's next for you creatively?
Exactly the same. It'll be the same process. It'll be writing, assembling, editing, and just creating more books, creating more art. Hopefully, continuing to work with great people, and just create things together. It's fantastic, and that's what I love to do. So I'm sure I'll just keep doing that.
I am so glad you're here with me. I really am, and you're the man to me, and I wish nothing but the best.
Now, that means a lot, Mike.
Talented. Yes, you're one of my favorite people. All right, then. Well, I want to thank you, Ryan Quinn Flanagan. The book is Kiss the Heathens. Pick it up today. And to you, the listening audience, like I share with you every time we're together, let poetry ring somewhere throughout the land. Good night, everybody. Good night, Ryan.
Good night, Michael. Thanks so much again.
All right, my friend.
Quintessential Listening, Poetry Online Radio, is available on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. You can also check out the website at QLPOR.com.